Hey, this is Caio.
And this is Mike.
From essentialdeveloper.com. So before we start, I would like to set some rules here.
Okay.
First of all, we should stop every 30 minutes.
Okay, like a tomato.
Yes.
Great.
So we can rethink what we're doing and we can have a brainstorm.
Reflect.
Yes. And also, since we started as an iOS application and I don't want to have this limitation, I would like to start a new project. And I really think it's important for us to show ways where you can accelerate.
Right.
Make the rapid feedback of testing faster and also create modular code.
Okay.
So we could start with a simple macOS application.
Yes.
I don't want to have the limitation on platforms.
I agree.
So I think this game can run in anything. I would really like to see this game on the tvOS at some point.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Okay, so let's start as a macOS application. Have you set the alarm?
Yes.
Okay. So let's create it as a framework. And that's going to be the real game. How the game works.
Right?
The engine.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's how the game operates. Just the logic with no UI, no external world.
That's the modularization of our project, right? We can separate the business logic from the UI. So now if you want to deploy it later on the Apple TV, you just need to plug in the Apple TV UI. Same for the iPhone, same for the iPad maybe.
For the watch?
For the watch, yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So let's call this QuizEngine. Swift unit test, yes please. Okay. It creates some files for me. I don't want any of this.
Yeah, we can get rid of those.
Okay. So since we're thinking about the game, I think the first thing we can reason about right now, about how it operates, is this loop of questions until we reach the result.
Right.
And I see it like as a flow.
Right.
How the game flows from question to question until we reach the result. I think can we start there?
Yeah, sounds good. Definitely, I don't want to start from creating assumptions for models, right? Because I really don't know how our models are going to fit there. So it could probably add complexity that we don't need there. So we know that we are going to need the flow, right? So we can start from there.
Yeah. I think the models need to be very flexible, generic, because we can get data from so many different sources.
Right.
Okay, let's see what we can create from here. Okay, let's start with a simple test. Flow tests. Okay, we need to import exit tests. And let's start with our flow test class. Okay. Let me create this test and you tell me what you think about it. So I like to start the test with a case that I have no questions.
Okay.
It might seem silly, but it's a possibility. You don't want this to happen, but if it happens, you don't want the app to crash, let's say. So
exactly. You want to deal with it.
Deal with it.
Yep.
Okay. And you need a way to start a flow, to start the game.
Right.
Okay. So we're probably going to need some kind of start function. Given a scenario, let's say no questions, or let's say with no questions, what we want to happen?
Go to results, I guess.
Yes. Okay, so this flow, since it's decoupled from any UI and any platform, it needs to delegate the presentation to someone else.
Right.
Like this routing, like this way of presenting in a navigation controller or as a modal or any other
any
platform.
Yeah.
Specific way.
Yeah.
So, okay, I don't know how to name this yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with assertion, what I expect to happen. let's say I have a router and I would expect it not to route to any question. Let's start there.
Okay.
I don't want to think about results yet. I don't know how a result looks like. So routed question count
Whoops.
is 0.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. So I have a router and I want to make sure that when I start with no questions, I don't route to any question.
Yep.
It's a no op. And it's something I can start. And it's probably the flow. But since this is the object under test, or the system under test, I don't want to call it flow.
I agree.
Every time I open a test case file, a test file, what I want to see is, what am I testing here?
Yes.
Right? And having consistency in naming. I know people that call it object under test. I know people that call it system under test. I prefer system under test.
Yeah.
And I use SUT.
I think it reads better than OUT, or I've seen many code bases.
OUT looks like out.
Right? Exactly. Or they literally have object under test, written there, which is, I think it's too big for the purposes.
Okay, so we need to create an SUT. And the SUT is the flow.
Yes.
Or exactly. System under test is the flow.
And it also matches the name of the test file, right?
Yes.
My class.
I normally call my test file as the same name of the class under test, or the struct under test, or anything under test, plus test at the end.
Yes.
But sometimes a test file is testing a bunch of classes together. If it's more like an integration test, it would have a different name. It's more about what it's doing, the behavior.
Yes, the behavior of the system as a whole.
Yes, exactly.
And you need a router there also.
Yes. So the flow needs to know about the router, so they can communicate. Okay? So I'm going to create a router here. And I'm going to pass it to my flow. And so far, I can even compile this because none of those types exist.
Okay.
I can try and you see it failing, of course. Okay, so we'll start creating the flow first. And since this is production code, I'm going to add it to my main folder.
Yeah.
So I'm going to create it as flow as well. And I want to show something here that I've learned with John Reed.
Okay.
And it really changed my life. So if you hold Shift, Alt, and Command and select a file, you can open it
in a different
pane. You can split the window.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So I like to have my unit test on the left and the production code on the right, but whatever works for you. So now we can make space here and focus.
Entirely.
No distractions.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
So finally I can create my class flow. And since we are pairing and we are using this as a showcase, I think we should reason about everything we do.
Why do you select to create as a class and not as a struct here?
Exactly. Why is this a class? Well, it could be a struct.
So far,
there's no need for it to be a class.
Yeah.
And I've seen this discussion a lot lately when people are talking, well, if it doesn't need to be a class, it should be a struct. And people saying also, it's not because it doesn't have to be a class, it should be a struct. So there's at least like two schools of thought there.
Right.
And how we should handle it. At first I would make everything struct just to see how far I could go.
Right.
But nowadays I probably thinking more about this when I start. Well, I mean, does it make any sense for this flow to be handled like plain data, something that you can pass around
just
and
values.
it gets a copy of it?
Yeah.
Or is this more like an identity, is more like a behavior rather than data?
I definitely see it more as a behavior and not just plain values, right? I don't think it makes sense to copy this thing, right?
If you really want to make this very, very functional and
That's
data oriented.
yeah.
Yes, you could make this a struct. You could even make it just pure functions.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see any value right now to make it a struct. I think this more as behavior rather than data. So I'm inclined to make this a class. Maybe change this in the future. It's just how I feel about it right now, and that's why I chose it.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine right now.
Okay. Let's carry on.
Yeah, let's go.
So we need a router here.
And what is this router?
Well, a router is a type that we're going to communicate, but we don't know the implementation yet because you can have many implementations depending on the platform it's running. So it's pretty much a protocol.
Right. Okay.
It's a contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's a contract.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It doesn't tie us down to any implementations.
Yes. So let's make this a protocol router. And we need to have an initializer because that's a class. If it was a struct, you would get the initializer for free. And this is one of the reasons people think it should be a struct, because you write less code. Maybe they're right? Let's see where we go.
Okay.
So we're going to have to write our initializer so we can capture the router. That's it.
What do you think of setting the router as private?
We should start thinking about access control right now. Well, especially because this class now is internal and it's not accessible to our test target. I want other modules talking to this module. I don't want this module depending on other modules. I don't need to make the initializer public.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're going to have some factory that's going to give you a flow or start the game for you. I don't know yet, but
it's a decision we don't need to make right now. And
yes, I don't think we need. So let's keep it internal for now.
Okay. Makes sense.
So we can make this internal class accessible to our test target by making a testable import. We can import the QuizEngine. So now we have access to all the internal types and functions, and anything.
Right.
Another thing we could do is to
change the target members.
This file to the target test, but then you have to manage these.
I don't like that.
I don't like that. That's not the way to go. So okay, we cannot compile yet because this router. How do you say that?
I don't know. I'm very confused.
Okay, someone tell us how we pronounce this in the comments, please.
Okay.
So this router, it's a protocol. You cannot create it like that. So we're gonna probably have a fake one.
Right. I think for our needs, we can create a spy, right?
Okay. So let's create a router spy here.
That can be in the flow test class. Yeah. Inner class.
It doesn't need to be public to anyone. Maybe we need to reuse it. We move it to a file.
Export it. Yeah.
Extract so far, I think that's fine here.
Needs to conform to this thing.
Yes. It needs to conform to router. That is just an empty protocol so far.
Mm-hmm.
And if I try to compile, it's not gonna work. First of all, my flow don't have a start method.
Almost there.
Okay, let's create a start method. Does nothing.
That's it. One more.
And now we need to add this question count here. And let's make it an integer. And it's going to have a default value of
0. Okay. We're not going to see a failing test. But we had the build errors and it's pretty dumb so far.
Yes. Okay. So now we can name this test. I think. Start with no questions.
Does not route to any.
Route to question. Okay. Yeah. I don't like that we didn't see a failing test here. But that's the no-op test. Okay. So, okay, let's see what happens. If I have one question, routes to question.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we need a way to start this with a question.
Okay. Sounds like we can inject the questions.
Yes. Okay. It's going to be an array of questions then.
What is the type?
Could be a string now.
I think so, right? We don't need anything else.
Okay.
Anything more. So just a string.
Yes. Okay. So we need these, and we're going to have this here. And we're going to capture it. But now we're going to break our test. Like, we cannot compile anymore.
Okay.
So what I want to do, I want to comment out this one and make the first one that was passing pass again.
Okay.
Or at least compile. So it's pretty easy to see that no question is just an empty array. It's not nil. It's an empty array.
Exactly.
There are no questions there.
It's very declarative.
And I can build again. Yes, it passes. Okay. So now, if I have one question.
You always want to refactor from green, right? That's very important. Because if you don't refactor from green, it's hard to keep track of your changes, and you might break more things as you go, right?
Yes.
So it adds on the complexity a lot.
It slow you down, and you lose a lot of confidence.
Right. Plus, when you're green, you can commit, so you can revert back then if you mess up in the future when you refactor.
So a bunch of things we can do here. We also, every time we make a test pass, we can commit.
Right. I think that's a little extreme, though.
Yeah. Or you can say every time you make like 5 test pass, or you get a behavior working.
Exactly.
You commit.
When you get a behavior chunk of the functionality.
I like to commit before I start refactoring, because if I do something that I don't like, I can just revert easily.
Exactly.
I don't like to rely on undo in my IDE. I don't think that's the way to go.
Yes.
So far we have only 2 tests. We didn't do any refactoring yet. I think we are good.
Okay.
So my expectation now is that this count should be 1. Well, how are we going to accumulate this count? We need a way of capturing this. So we need the flow to send a message to the router. And this router, again, is just a protocol now, because it's going to have different implementations for different platforms. On iOS, you're probably going to have a navigation controller router or a storyboard router.
Right.
That handles going from question to question and presenting the UI. Now we need to add a method here to our router.
Okay.
That
can just route to question
to question. And a question is a string.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you can pass a string there.
Right?
I think that's what we need so far.
And our spy is going to have to implement that. And what it's going to do is just accumulate the count. The number of times this method was invoked.
That's the behavior we want.
Okay. So if we run this, we have a failing test.
Nice.
Okay. So to make this pass,
the simplest thing.
Yes. We just invoke that to question and anything. Just an empty string or something. But now we broke our first test. You see how the test helps you. Hey, it sounds very silly to have the 0 count. But now we have a bug if we didn't have the test.
Exactly.
To make this pass, we need to check if questions dot is empty or not.
It's not empty.
Is empty.
Yeah.
Then we run it, and now it passes.
Why is it so fast, by the way? Your unit tests.
Well, because I'm not running the simulator.
Okay.
I'm running the macOS target.
That was blazing fast.
Instant, right?
Instant.
People may think I'm cutting the video, but no, that's the real speed.
That's the
how fast this is. This cycle.
Yeah.
Rapid feedback.
So when you're dealing with business logic in a separate component, it doesn't. And although you know that it needs to be deployed on iOS, let's say, you can just make a new module for the Mac and have this speed as a bonus.
Yes, definitely. And every time I have code that is not UI related, it's more business rules, or even sometimes a service or an API layer, I would have this a separate project where I can run the tests in isolation.
Right.
I can add this product to the CI server. So when I'm testing my app, I don't have to test the API layer at the same time. It really accelerates my process, and I can run the unit test several times a minute.
Yeah.
Every time I change a single line, I rerun my entire project test.
No funds go out.
Command U all the time. No funds going out, nothing.
Okay.
It improves my test feedback, and it makes my code modular. It's win-win.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have this, but now I don't like this hard-coded string here. For my next test, I want to make sure that I'm getting
the
right question.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to create with one question, routes to question. But now, instead of testing the count, I want to test the value passed to the router.
Exactly.
So routed question should be
Q1.
Q1.
Okay, our tomato is done.
Okay. Should I just make this test pass?
Yeah.
Before we stop?
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
30 seconds. So I'm going to create a routed question. So now I can investigate the value.
Yes. And I think you need to give it a default value.
Okay, so I'm going to make it nullable.
That's fine. And the name.
So routes to correct question. Let's run this, and we have a failing test, and we can stop here.
Okay.
Okay, so far, how are you feeling about this approach?
I think that's very important. Sit back and actually think first the problem. And it's just 30 minutes, as you said, right? We did not lose a bunch of time.
Most of the time we were talking.
Right.
We are pairing, right?
Exactly.
Not even writing code, we are reasoning. We are coming to an understanding and showing this approach. So I would say it would be much, much faster when we focus and it just let's get this done. But I think this conversation is so important.
Yeah.
Because one thing about pairing is that you're passing your knowledge, you are sharing the responsibility. And I think that two heads, two brains, work better than one. And let's say one day I'm sick or I'm on holidays, you can cover for me, you can pass this knowledge forward to another pair.
Most importantly, we did not see the simulator.